In the summer of 1962, just days before the world would lose her forever, Marilyn Monroe sat alone in her Brentwood home. She stared at a telephone that never rang. The woman America adored as the ultimate symbol of desire carried a truth few ever imagined. Behind the soft voice and platinum hair was someone exhausted, disappointed, and deeply wounded by the very men history remembers as legends. 7 names echoed through her final days. 7 powerful figures who had everything: fame, talent, influence, yet failed her when the lights went out and the doors closed. In her darkest hours, Marilyn searched her memories, trying to understand how the most desired woman on earth had never once felt truly desired. Before we uncover these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because what Marilyn endured will forever change how you see Hollywood's golden age. The first name to surface belonged to a man America worshipped as a hero, Joe DiMaggio. Strong, silent, the definition of traditional masculinity. But that silence became Marilyn's cage. Joe approached intimacy the same way he approached baseball, with rigid discipline and no emotion. He never spoke, never asked what she wanted, never acknowledged her as anything more than something to own. His expression never changed. His movements were precise, mechanical, almost detached. Marilyn remembered lying beneath him, searching his eyes for connection, and finding nothing at all. To Joe, her body was a prize, something to protect, display, and use, but never truly know. When she tried to introduce playfulness or change, he shut down, insisting there was only one acceptable way. The emptiest moments came afterward. Joe would turn away and fall asleep without a word. No tenderness, no reassurance, no recognition of what had just happened. Beside the most famous athlete in America, Marilyn felt invisible. The world desired her, but her own husband made her feel like she didn't exist. Joe's failure wasn't cruelty or violence, it was absence. He loved the image of Marilyn Monroe, but had no interest in Norma Jean, the woman underneath. Every silent encounter reminded her she was valued for what she symbolized, never for who she truly was. Then came the intellectual. When Marilyn married the celebrated playwright Arthur Miller, she believed she'd finally be seen for her mind. Arthur represented escape, depth, respect, and legitimacy beyond the dumb blonde image. But behind closed doors, that dream collapsed. Arthur treated intimacy the way he treated his work, analytically, distant, observational. Marilyn could feel him thinking instead of feeling, studying instead of connecting. He would interrupt moments to comment on psychology or technique, draining any sense of passion. Worse was his condescension. Arthur made her feel foolish even in the most vulnerable moments. He corrected her words, explained things she already understood, and redirected her desires to fit his theories. Spontaneity had no place in his carefully constructed world. Marilyn remembered nights when Arthur would finish and immediately reach for his notebook, jotting down ideas for his plays, anything but acknowledging her. She was a muse in theory, but an inconvenience in reality. She married him to prove she was more than a body, only to be judged as a body that failed to meet intellectual expectations. With Arthur, she learned that quiet superiority could wound as deeply as open cruelty. Then came the performer who never stopped performing. The French actor arrived like a promise. Romance, passion, sophistication. Eve seemed to offer everything her American husbands did not. But Marilyn quickly realized he was never real, not even in private. Their affair, which began during the filming of Let's Make Love, lived up to its title, because that's all it was, a performance. Eve treated every encounter like a scene. He was aware of his posture, his movements, his image. Passion was something he acted, not something he felt. He whispered French phrases that sounded rehearsed, touched her in ways that felt choreographed. Most unsettling was his narration, describing his actions aloud, as if directing himself. Marilyn didn't need to understand the language to know the truth. She wasn't a partner, she was a prop. When she tried to bring honesty or vulnerability into the moment, he gently guided her back to the role he'd written for her. He had a fixed idea of how Marilyn Monroe should behave, and the real woman was not allowed to interfere. She felt herself drifting outside her own body, watching herself perform, even in private. Eve taught her a brutal lesson. Sometimes the most passionate men are simply the best actors. And then there was the ultimate symbol of power, the president, John F. Kennedy. What should have felt intoxicating only left her hollow. Their secret encounters were brief, calculated, and cold. Kennedy treated intimacy like another transaction, efficient, discreet, and disposable. He arrived through back doors, stayed only as long as necessary, and vanished back into his world of authority. There was no illusion of romance, no tenderness, no concern. Marilyn was just another indulgence in a long list of conquests. Their encounters felt less like romance and more like presidential briefings, scheduled, efficient, and entirely centered on his needs. What hurt most was how disposable she felt. Kennedy never asked about her day, her emotions, or her life. There was no seduction, no curiosity. He simply assumed her availability, took what he wanted with effortless confidence, and moved on. Marilyn wasn't treated like a woman. She was treated like a service, no different from the staff who cooked his meals or pressed his suits. She later recalled the hollow feeling of lying alone afterward, staring at the door he had just closed, knowing his thoughts had already shifted to policy, strategy, and power. She meant nothing beyond a moment of physical release. The most powerful man on earth made her feel utterly powerless. Kennedy's failure was his complete lack of humanity. He reduced Marilyn to a function, something to satisfy and forget. She had hoped a man with such confidence and control might truly see her. Instead, he looked straight through her, using her body while remaining untouched by the person inside it. Another figure emerged from the smoke-filled memories of her past, the chairman of Cool himself, Frank Sinatra. Wrapped in cigarette haze and expensive cologne, Sinatra carried undeniable charm and legendary confidence. But behind the magnetism was a man whose emotional temperature never matched the heat of his reputation. Frank treated intimacy like a tightly scheduled business deal. He arrived, performed with flawless precision, and left, detached, efficient, finished. His skill was real, but it was empty of feeling. Marilyn sensed he was simply checking boxes, offering technique without vulnerability. What stayed with her most was what came after. Sinatra would light a cigarette, pour a drink, and begin cutting her down, mocking her acting, questioning her intelligence, dismissing her sensitivity. It was as if he needed to shrink her, to reclaim control after allowing even a moment of closeness. He called her kid with casual contempt, reminding her she was just another name on a long list. One night, when Marilyn tried to extend their time together, hoping for conversation, for warmth, Frank looked at her with irritation and said, "Don't get confused about what this is." That sentence destroyed any illusion that she mattered beyond the moment. Sinatra's failure was calculated mastery. He knew exactly how to satisfy physically, and he deliberately withheld everything else. It was power through denial. He trained her to accept fragments of attention while making sure she never forgot where she stood. Then came Marlon Brando. He entered her life like a storm, raw, intense, magnetic. The revolutionary actor promised passion and depth, something real. What he delivered was one of the most unsettling experiences Marilyn ever endured. Brando couldn't stop performing, even in intimacy. Without warning, he would shift personas mid-moment, slipping into accents, characters, and emotional states that felt disconnected from reality. Marilyn never knew if she was with Marlon the man or a role consuming him. He whispered lines from plays, spoke about himself in the third person, became someone else entirely without explanation. But the most disturbing part wasn't the unpredictability, it was the absence. Marlon was never truly there. He was always somewhere else, lost inside himself. Somewhere else, always performing, always turning her into a prop in whatever private drama he was exploring. Marilyn felt like a mirror he used to study himself, never a partner in a shared experience. But what disturbed her most were his experiments. Brando deliberately pushed emotional boundaries, not out of desire, but curiosity. He wanted reactions, he wanted data. Their intimacy became a testing ground for his method acting, a place where he observed rather than connected. When Marilyn showed vulnerability, he withdrew and watched, mentally cataloging her responses like a scientist studying a subject. She later recalled breaking down in tears during one encounter, overwhelmed by the psychological pressure. Brando didn't comfort her. He leaned back, lit a cigarette, and calmly asked questions,